Today we're going to be talking about, is balance a myth or the myth of balance? So let's just start diving right into it. Let's start off with the basics, like balance. What exactly
is
balance?
Yeah.
What would you say balance is? If you're trying to have a successful life, and where's the silver lining, I guess? Like, what do you think? Like, do you even think it's achievable?
Personally, I think it depends on what your own definition of balance is. But I think that you go through different seasons of life of like, what is the priority? Like, I think it all goes back to prioritization.
Welcome to the Good Seed Podcast. I'm Allie.
And I'm Rachel.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Good Seed Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about, is balance a myth or the myth of balance? So let's just start diving right into it. Let's start off with the basics, like balance. What exactly
is
balance?
Yeah.
What would you say balance is?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I feel like it's such a big buzzword, right? Like, that's something that everyone's like always searching for, is like work-life balance and like all of these things. And so I feel like whenever we're really thinking about like why we want balance or what we're trying to achieve with balance, it's like we want all the things. We want to we want to have our cake and eat it too. Like, most people want like a successful career and a happy marriage and happy kids and to be a fully present parent
Perfect
and
life.
The perfect life and to have their finances in order and work out and be healthy. And it's like, it's all too much. It's all too much. So yeah, like, I think burnout is a big result. I think a lot of people feel whenever they're trying to do all the things and be all the things to everybody, and focus on too many things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think being women, we fall into that too many times. And these are conversations that we get to have daily, right? And I think it sucks because, and I mean, it happens to guys too, right? Like, I could see a man trying to be a provider and trying to be the best husband possible and trying to be a present dad and trying to be all these things. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're really not going to be all the things at the same time because there's not enough time in the day, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest things that really successful people always preach about is focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So it's like, is balance really achievable if you're trying to have a successful life? And where's the silver lining, I guess? Like, what do you think? Like, do you even think it's achievable?
Personally, I think it depends on what your own definition of balance is. But I think that you go through different seasons of life of like, what is the priority? Like, I think it all goes back to prioritization. And there's a good analogy. So I love Mallory Irvin. She's like a podcaster, influencer, Kentucky girl. But she talks about this analogy of like, in life there are glass balls and there are rubber balls.
Okay, what does that mean?
So rubber balls, you can juggle, like you're juggling all these balls, right? Some of them are glass, some of them are rubber. Well, with a glass ball, if you drop it, what happens?
It breaks.
Shatters.
Right.
It's done. You're never going to put it back together the way that it was. If a rubber ball drops, what happens?
Bounces back.
It bounces back.
Right.
So sometimes when we have a lot of things on our plate, we have to sit back and take a sec and determine, what is a glass ball in life and what is a rubber ball.
That's such a great analogy. I've never heard that before.
Isn't
okay,
that
so you
great?
have to like decide what would break if you basically, if you're not taking care of that certain ball, let's say, what would break and what you can maybe push a little bit back because you know it'll bounce back.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So what are your glass and rubber balls? Yeah.
I think it also goes back to like the seasons of life, right? So like for me in my life right now, like rubber balls would be like sometimes friendships are rubber balls,
Okay, yeah.
right?
I can
like
see that, yep.
like I think a good friend who knows your character and knows your intentions, like you don't have to talk to them every single day.
Yeah.
And if you miss a dinner or a coffee date with them, you can explain like you're just in this busy season and they get it and they're cool and like
Yep.
that's fine. Your relationship is still intact, right? I think that's true for a lot of relationships and family members. And I think, I don't know, maybe in a marriage, right? Like sometimes you can like if you have a really solid foundation of a marriage, sometimes you might be able to deprioritize that a little bit and let them pick up the slack.
I
Right?
don't
Do you
think
think?
marriage, yeah, I don't think marriage is, like, I think a lot of people have this delusional mindset around marriage, which is like, I have to give 100% of me 100% of the time. And that's just so unrealistic.
Right. It's not achievable.
Because marriage is a long-term thing.
Right.
And you never show up 100% every single day because you're not a robot.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's where, and back to scripture, it's like when you're in a marriage, you become one because you have to, sometimes you're going to have to pick up your spouse's slack, and it's okay. And that's what you're there to do.
It's a partnership.
It's
and
a
it's
team, right?
Yeah.
A teamwork. So it's like, if I'm married and my spouse is like having a really rough time at work and he's really busy right now, I'm not going to be calling him and being like, hey, you have to take the kids to their soccer practice and you have to pick them up from, because
we're divvying things out 50-50.
Yeah, no,
like,
that
doesn't work
that's
all
unreal.
the time.
So it's like, I watched this podcast once, and this lady, she was like, we're family focused. Some marriages are like partner focused. Some others are kid focused. We're family focused. So she was like, we literally have, me and my spouse have a metric system of numbers, and he'll call me and tell me, hey, I'm working at a 20 today. That means that I have to come up with the 80.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm working at a 20 today. I'm beat from work. I really can't make soccer practice today. So I'm going to call my kid and be like, hey, Dad's at a 20 today. I still have to come up with dinner. I still have to pick up your sister. I still have to do this and that. Do you think we can push out the practice today and you can probably skip it and go on Thursday? And that's like the family dynamic,
that's
which
a
I
really
think it's
smart
really
idea.
It's really smart and really cool because you're mindful about working as a whole.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like picking up the slack because your partner is not going to be able to provide 100% of the time for you. And that's okay. Right? Or let's say like pregnant women, whenever they're pregnant and it's like they're basically dying, right? Like energy wise, and they have kids and they have to cook and then their spouse does have to pick up their slack, which is not slack, but they have to be that person in that stage of life,
right?
Because she's not going to be able to put up 100%,
what her normal 100%
right,
looks like
at that time, and neither after giving birth,
right?
She's probably going to be able to get that 100% back maybe 2 years after the baby's born, right? So it's like marriage I don't believe that marriage works like that. Like it's not 50-50. It could never work that way.
I agree.
And like stages of life too, again, what I was talking about, and like women, like it's really hard for us. Like think about dating. You're only focused on your partner, right? And then you guys decide to have a baby, get married. And then you guys decide to have a baby. Now you're focused on the baby. So it's like, do you have a real true balance in your marriage, work, and mom life when you're giving birth, when you're postpartum? Absolutely not.
Your priorities change as your seasons of life change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And it's like, I think grace goes a long way here because we tend to fall back into like guiltness. And it happens to me.
Especially as women,
Especially as women, because it's like we really want to do all the things and be all the things for everyone, especially our immediate family. And it's like you really can't. And then if you don't take care of yourself, then like how do you take care of everyone else? And that's a whole nother topic. But it happened to me whenever I had two babies, right? Matthias was 1.5 when I had Sophie, and Sophie was a preemie. And so I had to drive 4 hours daily to go in and out of like the hospital. when this was happening. And Matthias was a year and a half. We had a nanny at home, and the nanny was taking care of him. It wasn't me. I wasn't being the greatest mom to him at that moment, right? I was focused on my premature baby. And I felt really guilty. I felt really, really bad because he would lash out. He completely changed as like the angel baby that he is, because he's so
such a little angel.
Yeah, he's so calm. And I felt really bad, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't taken care of my baby.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay.
He's gonna be okay.
He'll bounce back. Live. Like
he'll bounce back.
He'll bounce back. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just for a season, right? And then now that Sophie got out of NICU and I was back in the house and everything was like more chilled out, I could be the mom that I've always been for him. But in that my focus in that time of my life was Sophia. It wasn't because I needed to focus on her.
Yeah. She was more fragile at that point.
So does balance like exist? I do not believe so.
I don't think it does either.
I don't believe so.
I think it's just constantly like prioritizing. Go back to the ball analogy, but like you have to prioritize what balls are in the air. And I know we're both like entrepreneurs, right? And so with running businesses,
that's huge.
Those are glass balls, right? Like you drop the ball and that it is hard to recover. Right, as a business owner. So like those are, and back to your point of like what makes people most successful in life, it is focus. Yeah, I've heard this said by like Steve Jobs and Alex Hormozy and like all these like massive, like very successful names. Like you have to focus on one thing at a time. And so, you know, I think that is very difficult. And I think that men probably are able to have that focus a lot easier. Because, you know, as a mom, and I'm not a mom, but like to your point of being a mom and running a business. Do you feel like you ever, like how did you do both? Like whenever you're running this massive trucking company and you have these two tiny humans and they're very, very young and needy and in the NICU and all these things, like, do you feel like you ever, I know you said that, you know, Matthias like had to go on the back burner a little bit, but how did you do it all? Like, do you feel like you ever achieved
burnout?
Any?
Like absolute burnout.
Yeah.
You know, like
what did that look like for you?
It got to a point where I had to really talk to him, and we had to hire a lot of help. I was doing the work of 3 people. While raising a 1-year-old, being pregnant, then when Sophie got here, I actually had her before. Like I had her at 36 weeks because of the stress that I was on. So this is where, is balance really a thing? It isn't, because if I were able to be a good mom to the baby I had in my womb, to being a good mom to Matthias, to being a good entrepreneur, and all these things at the same time, if I really had that balanced out, my baby wouldn't have been premature. So you can't have balance. Like it's just, it's an unreal thing, right? So I think that was my reality check in terms of like, I need to get my priorities straight, which is, I think, a good step into like, where are your glass and rubber balls? If you have your priorities straight, and you can't have 10 priorities. Like it doesn't work, like, right? So when you have your priorities straight, you know what to focus on, right? So if I had my priorities straight, I would have been like, okay, mom, because I'm pregnant, wife, probably, right? Work, or maybe wife, mom, work. But my work was my priority at the time. And that's just not smart. Like I look back now, and if I'm ever pregnant again, I would not, like I would prioritize that.
The pregnancy?
Yeah. Because it's just not, because of that stage in life, right?
And it's fragile, and you're exhausted, and
it's the life of my baby. Right? So I think that was my reality check. So whenever I had Sophia, and my late husband had a really strong character. So I had been seeing like the storm kind of like build up, because all the stress was on me, right? He had a lot of stress in terms of like the company was rapidly growing. Like, he had a lot on his plate. He had a lot of employees. I had a lot of employees too. So he had a lot of stress, but at the same time, I'm the one growing a baby inside of me. I was the one in the house with a toddler, and I did have help. Again, I had a nanny that was there with me every day. But it's not the same. Babies still want you. Right? So I had to talk with him, and whenever we were at the hospital after Sophie was born, I was like, we need to hire like 3 people tomorrow. And he was like, absolutely not, because the company isn't there yet. We can't hire 3 employees. And I was like, okay, then I'm quitting. Then I was like, if you
just like got to that point.
Yeah, I had to, because I was like, look at what this did to our baby. I don't even want to know what it's going to do to our marriage. Like, I was like, I'm not going to go this way again. Like, I'm going to burn out. I'm not going to be running a company basically 50-50 with you while raising 2 toddlers in my house. He only had to run half of the company because his role was not raising toddlers, right? Like, that's not a guy's role. So that's where I was like, no. I was like,
I need to be 25% in this business, not 50-50.
Yep. Yeah. And I was like, I'll do the back end admin work. I'm not going to get on calls anymore. I ran the whole logistics side of it. I had like, I think by this point I had like 12 girls working for me, getting loads and running the logistics thing. And I was just like, no, like, I'm going to run the admin side of it. I'll overlook the girls. We're going to promote this girl. She can be the supervisor. She can train people. She can do all these things. We're going to hire 3 more people. And then you're going to figure it out in terms of like with them. But I need this time.
As you're talking, like, it's kind of coming to my mind of like the superwoman complex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you feel like you have the superwoman complex? Or do you feel like you realize
I think that I don't
what
want
your
it.
limits are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it. Like, I don't want to, no. Like,
you're not the type of woman that's like, I can do it all.
No. Like, I think there's so much social pressure in this subject that it's like, screw it. I want to be home with my babies. Like, I want to, and I don't see myself as a stay-at-home mom of like teenagers, let's say. But like, could I be a stay-at-home mom with my kids and like maybe work part-time? I think I would love that. But I would still need a nanny and have my kids not with me for like half of the day. Yeah. You know, it's like, I don't want to be Wonder Woman. I don't. Like, I think
you don't want to run multiple businesses and be a mom and like all these things.
I'm tired, dude. Yeah. Like, I want a nap.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's fair either.
Think about like what burnout looks like.
That's it.
Because I'm sure a lot of people have experienced burnout. And what are some like signs for you of like whenever, because I think it's hard for most people in general to recognize like, oh crap, I am burnt
I'm
out.
getting there.
Yeah.
I don't think you know until you're there, unfortunately. I don't think, and especially with this is just personally, my brain, I think that I'm so resilient that I always push through things. And I push way beyond it where I should. And so when I'm burnt out, I am burnt. Like, and it's still I think it's a daily thing, right? Like, it's just a thing that we need to like, I guess, practice. But for me, I guess my metric system in terms of like how I feel I get burnout, it's when I'm just like over it.
Like you're not carrying the level that you should be carrying.
And I'm kind of like, I get indifferent. Like, I'm just like, I don't care about anything. And I think that because I'm such an, and this is a toxic trait of mine, like I'm such an all-in kind of person.
It's like a 0 or 100. There ain't no in between.
And it's very toxic.
Yeah.
But this is the way I function. Like, and whenever I put my heart in something, I put my whole heart in it, right? So I feel the same. Like, whenever I'm burnt out, I take my whole heart out of it because I'm just like, I can't. And probably defense mechanism, right? But I don't really, I think it's a thing that everyone has to practice to see what their burnout signals are. I think I feel it now more than before. But for me, my reality check was, hey, I have babies at that point when Sophie was born. And I told him this. I was like, I don't care about money. Like, I was like, I have no need to be working right now. Like, I was working 12-hour shifts, raising a kid and growing a baby inside of me. 12-hour shifts. Like, it's a lot. My baby, Matthias, was still like not sleeping through the whole night, you know? So
you're running off of no sleep. And
I think boundaries go a long way with this.
I was about to say, do you feel like as we kind of bring it to present day, are there maybe some like non-negotiables in your life if you're like, no, these are the things, we might call them glass balls, right?
Yeah.
Like these non-negotiable things in your life where you're like, no, come hell or high water, these things need to be taken care of. These things need to get done. Some people might call it self-care too, right, so that you can show up fully and wholly and like as your best self. Like as you've grown and aged and over the last few years, have you found any kind of non-negotiables?
I think that one of the most recent ones that I've been really prioritizing is sleep. Like, I think no one talks about, and again, like, this is a thing that everyone has to figure out by themselves. I think if I get less than 6 hours of sleep, I'm in a mood. So I think like before I would work until nighttime. You know that we work until nighttime, right? Yeah. And right now I'm just like,
I've turned my calendar off at like 8, 9 o'clock at night.
So I would, my last call would be at 9.
Yeah.
Right? And like since like a month ago that I noticed that I was like on my 9 p.m. call, I was just like over it. Yeah. Again, another like the sign of burnout. I like my last call now is at 6:30. So 6:30, then 7:30 I more or less end. Then I spend like an hour with the kids until 8:30. Right? And then I put them to bed and then I start getting ready for bed. I can start getting the things ready for them for school and stuff the next day. And then I get in the shower, have a me time, watch an episode on Netflix. I chill out. Yeah.
I feel like there's like, we talk about this all the time, you and I individually and like in the things we do for work, but like taking care of yourself. And I thought this was such like voodoo bull crap, like for the longest time, like self-care, what is that, who needs that? But like truly, like you cannot show, like you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And like you cannot show up as your best self and like give your best in work and your business and your relationships and like all of these things, like if you're burned out and mentally exhausted and physically exhausted and sleep deprived and have a bad attitude or whatever, your house is a wreck, so you're feeling disheveled and like all these things, like you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that's something that I've had to like realize, because I'm always just the type, I'm like, I'm fine, like I'm optimistically delusional, and I'm like, I'm fine, and then I'm not fine, and then I crash and burn.
And right. You're like sick. You even get
get sick. All like that's how I burn out. Is I get sick. My body tells me I'm burned
I think I'm like mentally drained. And I just like need to sleep for like 3 days. And I think you literally get sick.
I do.
Like you get the flu.
Yeah,
like,
my body's like, you're done.
This is as far as I take you. Because on like, your own.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sucks because physically, well, there's the whole thing about like cortisol.
Right.
And stress. It's like you get ill.
Right.
Like your body, it will transcend into that, right?
So I heard a statistic about like stress and cortisol. I believe this was, and I don't even want to say the number, but like I will, but I think it was something like 73% of diseases are caused from stress.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's no one talks about. Like it is the biggest killer in society.
We should do a whole episode on this.
We should.
There's so many people that have type 2 diabetes because of the inflammation that cortisol produces on your body. Like it's just so wild.
Yeah.
Because no one talks about stress enough. And your body is literally in survival mode. Yeah. And what's the thing about this hormone? We as women, we're so prone and sensitive to them, right? So I think we should do a whole.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, because it's like, it's a big subject and no one. I think another thing is we get used to it, right? So going back to balance and focus, what would you say if you had to get like 3 tips about what you could do to actually focus on one thing on this stage in life, like what would you say the top 3 things are?
Yeah. And I'm not a poster child for like time management and doing all the things. Yeah. Like I'm learning every single day. But I will say one thing that I have learned, kind of going back to like give yourself grace, right? Like there's only 24 hours in a day. If you kind of reframe that, then you get to choose how you spend your time. Like maybe like flip your mindset around of like time scarcity versus time abundance, of like, okay, there's always enough time for what is most important. Let's carve that out first and then layer everything else in secondarily to that. And so I think like getting out of this time is scarce mindset, like, oh, there's never enough time. You know, people always say that, like, oh, I don't have enough time for that. I don't have enough time to work out, or I don't have like, that's kind of a mindset rabbit hole that you can go down. Excuse. And it's an excuse. So you always make time for what's most important to you.
Your priorities.
And you need to go back to your priorities. So I think the first thing would be like kind of reframe your mindset around it and definitely identify your priorities. Going back to the glass ball versus the rubber ball analogy. And I think that's so helpful. Something that we both do, like as a second tip, is do not disturb on your phone.
Yeah.
Your phone setting, like that is pure gold.
That's gold.
Yeah.
My phone will never not be on do not disturb.
Unless I'm like expecting a phone call.
Pro tip,
or
like go to your settings.
Just have it automatically.
Just turn, automatically. Like, and second, go to your settings, turn off the little, they have to call you like 3 times and then it rings. Crap. I turned that off too. Yeah. And then go to your favorites and you can actually choose, like I have the only people that are in my favorites are literally my kids' daycare and my boyfriend. Like that's it, right?
Wow, I'm insulted. It's fine. What do I gotta do to be your favorites, girl?
I'll put you today.
I'm just playing.
So daycare, boyfriend, and that's it. And those are the only 2 people that can like literally reach me at any point of the day for absolutely like whatever reason, right? So, and it gives me a lot of peace because I know exactly who's calling whenever my phone is still on Do Not Disturb, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to run to take this call.
I think also turning off all of your social media notifications.
Oh, right? I have none on.
Because like every time that you get a notification from your phone, if you are working, you asked about like focusing on a task. Like if you're working on a task, I think the statistic is like it takes your brain at least 15 minutes to like refocus back on that task after you've broken your focus. And so you waste a lot of time by like refocusing and you never get anything done. And so turning off all notifications, like do not disturb, and all of my social media notifications stay off. Like
they're off.
They're always off.
Yeah. I have absolutely nothing on. Yeah. Like I think the only thing that prompts up that I have notifications of is like our work app. Yeah. The app that we use to work. But that's basically it. Like I have nothing else on because it's distracting. Yeah. And it doesn't stop.
No, it never
stops. When I go in, let's say Facebook, and I have like the notifications, like it says like so-and-so posted and they haven't posted in a long time, and I'm like I
don't care.
And that's what you would get dinged on, right? Yeah. So
everyone's trying to steal your energy, steal your focus. You get to be in control of that. Like don't let people infiltrate that.
So grace, which also includes like literally boundaries, saying no to people. Yeah. Do not disturb. And what's like the third one?
I definitely think just like constantly checking your priorities. Like going back to like, what are my glass balls? What are my rubber balls? And that might change on a daily basis. It might change on a weekly basis. Like as new things come into your life, something might drop in your lap one day and it's a glass ball and it has to be handled. Yep. And that's what you have to do. A family member gets sick or anything like that happens, that becomes the ultimate priority and everything else just becomes a rubber ball. Like absolutely. That just is the way that it has to be sometimes. So I think just constantly checking your priorities and then going back to like giving yourself grace. Like you can do anything, but you can't do everything. Yeah. So I think
not if you want to focus.
Not if you want to be successful at anything. Right. I don't know. If you want to be unsuccessful at a lot of things, go for it. Yeah. But if you really want to be successful, then you have to focus and prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that we've determined that balance is a myth.
Yeah, I think
Because I mean, if you guys have other thoughts about this, like, please let us know.
Yeah.
But like, willing to challenge my mindset because I've tried and failed every single time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next Tuesday, so stick around, follow us for more, and we'll see you there.
Talk
Bye,
to you soon.
guys.
Bye.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow along with us on social media at The Good Seed Media. And stay tuned for all the updates and more information.